Good afternoon. This is Dr. McDaniel, and today's May 5th, 2019, Cinco de Mayo. It's pretty rainy, a little overcast here in New Jersey, so I hope, regardless, I hope everyone's having a great end of the weekend. Yesterday I started off talking about urinary tract infections, UTI, or cystitis. Bladder infection is really what it is. And I gave a list of the usual or the most common signs and symptoms. To preface that, I will add, as I went into detail about yesterday, that all of the signs and symptoms of a urinary tract infection, or UTI, cystitis, are always due to inflammatory changes or effects because of the bacterial presence. So any problem that causes inflammation, an inflammatory response in the urinary system, can give the same signs and symptoms. The most common reason for those signs and symptoms, or the most common reason for having inflammatory changes or inflammatory effects of the urinary tract system, will be a bacterial infection. So bacteria is the most common reason, but obviously it's not the only reason for having inflammatory changes or inflammatory symptoms of the urinary system. Be that as it may, the signs and symptoms that most commonly are seen are going to be nocturia, and that's waking up in the middle of the night to urinate when you usually don't for the bladder infection. It will also be urgency. Urgency is feeling like your bladder's full. It turns out it's not actually full. Dysuria, which is painful urination. So pain, pressure, discomfort, burning, achy, any unusual symptom either during urination or as soon as you finish urinating. And as I stated yesterday, that sign or symptom, the dysuria, is one of the most common complaints, but it's also the most commonly confused. A lot of women will often say that they have dysuria and contact the office, say that they need an antibiotic for their bladder infection because they're having painful urination, when in reality the painful urination is because the urine has hit the skin and the skin is irritated or inflamed. It's not because the urinary system is spasming and contracting and causing that painful urination or painful or unusual discomfort during or as soon as they finish urinating. So that's a distinguishing factor. Another common complaint is hesitancy, and that's when you go to urinate, it feels like the urine doesn't flow as soon as you want it to. You have to wait. There's a bit of a pause. Another is retention, and retention is the sensation that when you finish urinating, there's still urine in the bladder, hasn't completely emptied. You have to bear down or try to force the urine out. Another complaint is a bad odor when someone urinates, so malodor. That urinary odor is common with the bladder infection because bacteria has a bad odor. So if there's a high concentration of bacteria in the bladder, or in the bladder, the urine will have a bad odor. Of course, the bladder should be sterile. There shouldn't be any bacteria at all. So bladder and urine shouldn't have a bad odor. It can smell like urine, like amines, but it shouldn't have a bad odor, unpleasant odor. Another common complaint is that the urine is really dark. Now, of course, the urine is dark. It's kind of a vicious cycle. The urine is often dark because the urine is concentrated. So one of the main reasons for getting a bladder infection or cystitis in the first place is because that person most commonly didn't drink lots of fluid, so they didn't flush their system. So the urine already started off being dark because it's concentrated. And then once they get the infection, it's painful to urinate, so people tend to avoid urinating by not drinking much fluids, subsequently having even darker or more concentrated urine because they're even now worse not flushing their system or not drinking lots of fluids. Another complaint is nausea or vomiting. Now, nausea or vomiting can occur anytime you have pain, inflammatory changes in the pelvic organs or in the abdominal organs. And most commonly, the nausea will occur if the bladder is very inflamed for the infection. The intestines, the small intestines, sit all over the abdominal pelvic environment. So they're sitting on the bladder's inflamed, the intestines become inflamed, slows the bowels down, and then they don't move their bowels well, so there's a lot of gas bloating because of it, so they have nausea with or without vomiting. Another common complaint will be hematuria, and that's blood in the urine. Doesn't matter how the blood looks, pink spotty just after you wipe, or frank bright red blood in the urine. So any kind of blood on the toilet paper or pink on the toilet paper or blood in the urine is hematuria, and that's because if the bladder's inflamed, it's spasming, it bleeds easily, it's fragile or friable, so people will see the blood on the toilet paper or potentially in the toilet bowl. Back pain is common, and that's lower back pain because the nerves from the bladder go to the lower back. So when the bladder is inflamed, it spasms, and the spasming of the bladder muscles causes that lower back pain. They can also have upper back pain if the bladder infection ascends into a kidney infection. So it can cause upper back pain because now the kidneys are inflamed. Lower abdominal pressure, discomfort, ache, even if someone's not urinating, is another common complaint. And that's again because the bladder's inflamed, it's spasming, so that's pressure, discomfort in the lower belly as well as the lower back. And then oftentimes the bowels will become inflamed, so they slow down, they build up with gas or air. That's another pressure, discomfort scenario. So a recap is going to be waking up at night to urinate when you usually don't, feeling like your bladder's full when it actually isn't, urinating more frequently than usual because of the spasming, frequent contracting of the bladder muscles, feeling like when you go to urinate, there's a bit of a pause, the urine doesn't flow as soon as you want it to, and then even when you finish urinating, feeling like the bladder doesn't completely empty, there's still urine in the bladder, pressure, discomfort, pain, burning, or unusual symptom either during urination or as soon as you finish urinating, blood in the toilet bowl, blood on the toilet paper, or pink on the toilet paper. Urine has a bad odor, and or the urine is dark like lemonade, not clear as water. Lower abdominal pain, lower abdominal pressure, discomfort even when you're not urinating, nausea, vomiting, and if it ascends into a kidney infection, then one will have fever and chills. And urinary frequency. So all of those complaints are due to inflammation of the bladder itself, and then if the infection gets worse, it ascends to the ureters, ascends to the kidneys, then it becomes not just a bladder infection or cystitis, it becomes a kidney infection or pyelonephritis. The generic term for all of those is a UTI, urinary tract infection. And let's see, so that's the recap on all of that. And then tomorrow I'll go over the treatment, the most likely sources or etiology or reasons why people get a bladder infection, and then, needless to say, ways to potentially prevent all of that scenario. So I hope that's been helpful. This is Dr. McDaniel. It's GYN Corner, all things health related for women. And if you'd like to come by the office, we're here in Midtown Manhattan, New York City, around the corner from Macy's, around the corner from Penn Station on 34th between 7th and 8th. And I also started a YouTube channel, GYN Corner, on YouTube, where you can just go through and easily find topics on things that I've already discussed, doing daily vlogs. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a good rest of the weekend.